Hi, this is Dee Kaler with USD's Career Development Center. Welcome to Alumni Zoom Trips, our virtual webcast series with USD alumni experts that provides a glimpse into the life of our alumni in the aftermath of the pandemic. This program is co-hosted with the Office of Alumni Relations. Joining us for this 22nd episode of Alumni Zoom Trips is USD alumna Jacquelyn Hontalas. Managing Director at Accenture's San Francisco offices, Jacquelyn has completed her undergraduate work in Business Administration and English from University of San Diego and her MBA at the University of San Francisco. At Accenture, she's currently part of a large global team focused on high-tech clients and managing over 100 people in 12 different countries. People, teaming, mentoring, and leadership development are some of Jacquelyn's top professional passions. Jacquelyn is on the board of directors for the Alpha Delta Pi sorority and in her spare time loves traveling, playing and watching basketball, reading, and cooking. So Jacquelyn, we're delighted to have you joining us
Thanks
this
so much, Dee.
morning. So can you tell our listeners how you got started in your career and what you like the most about being in San Francisco and working at Accenture?
Sure can. Well, I grew up in San Francisco, so that was a bit of a foregone conclusion for me to come back. But in terms of starting at my career, when I was in graduate school, I think like many people did not really know what I wanted to do next. And I met some people that had worked at Accenture and people who had worked at companies who had hired Accenture as a team. And they recommended that I do some informational interviews and really understand what they did all day, right? I thought, hey, if you're going to be a consultant, you have to be in an industry for 20 years and be an expert at something. And I didn't really understand what they did with their time. So in those informational interviews, I got a glimpse of their day-to-day and thought, this would be really great. Instead of really just working on strategy or having to have a ton of the background, Accenture has a lot of teams where we're actually doing a lot of the work with or for our clients. And I really liked that idea where we could go from strategy to actual execution. And so I put my application in. It took a very long time to get through the black hole of that HR process. But I started 13 years ago and have not looked back since.
That's incredible. And did you find a job right after your MBA or right after graduating from USD?
Yeah, so I took a slightly different path. I finished my undergrad at USD, and then I had done the LSAT and the GMAT, thinking I wanted to go to law school or do a joint degree, JD MBA, and then decided that I didn't want to be in school for another 4 years. So I went directly into my MBA program from undergrad, which was sort of an interesting process. There were a lot of duplicate courses, and I would say USD prepared me very well for my graduate coursework. But I went directly into my MBA program, and then upon completing that, I started at Accenture about 6 months later.
Okay. And any advice for those currently applying for MBA programs? What makes a great MBA application?
That's a really good question. It's been a long time since I did my application. I think really thinking through what you want or need your MBA for. I loved my time in graduate school, but looking back, right, going into consulting, I've gotten sort of a mini MBA. And so I know many people join consulting for a couple of years and then take a break to get their MBA. And, in today's culture and just the way that businesses work, it really depends on what you want to do, right? If you came from a communications or humanities undergrad and you really want to get more of the sort of business chops and learn more about accounting and financials, I would definitely recommend it. For those of you who have a business degree in undergrad, really figuring out why you want the MBA. For me, it was networking and figuring out what I wanted to do next and taking courses that I was interested in. But I go back and forth on sort of the overall cost benefit analysis on really spending that time and money to get that MBA, depending on what your career will look like.
Okay. And kind of expanding on that, how would you say the MBA degree has helped you achieve career success at Accenture and beyond?
I think in some cases, it just gave me, it definitely gave me a lot of connections, right? I was in school with people who were well into their careers. And so I learned a lot from them, just how they interacted. My MBA program, there was a lot of group projects, and unlike maybe sometimes in undergrad, everyone was there by their own choice, and it was a very different experience. And so I think in some ways it laid a really great foundation for my work. Just gave me a different way of engaging with professors or with different clients or classmates that really helped in working with my clients. And so I think that was the best part, is just sort of laying some additional foundation and just maturing and really figuring out how I wanted to interact and come across as a leader.
Thanks for that. And early on, you mentioned that, post-graduation, you had done a lot of informational interviews, to really understand what field you wanted to go into. So can you tell us a little bit about what a typical day looks like for you at Accenture, both before and after COVID?
Sure. So before COVID, things were very different. I work with a lot of clients in Silicon Valley, which is about 45 minutes to an hour by car from San Francisco, where I live. And so my day started pretty early, so I could commute early to beat the traffic. And usually I might either take some time to just relax and zone out, but oftentimes I'd be on a phone call on my way down to work. And then getting there, the day is filled with a lot of meetings. And as you go from being more junior, right? When you're more junior, there are less meetings and more execution, right? More creation of deliverables. Now I'm in a full day of calls, right? And so there's calls on a variety of different topics, which I really like. I get to kind of bounce from, there may be a sales meeting, there might be a delivery meeting, there's a prep meeting for one client, there's a quality review with another client. And so there's a lot of just bouncing from topic to topic. And then there's time to actually get work done, right? If there's a sponsor deck that needs to be created or data that needs to be looked at or reviews with the team, one-on-ones, mentoring, coaching. And so the days really look different every day, which I love. And that is probably one of the main reasons why I've stayed in consulting for so long, is it's never boring, that's for sure. So that was before COVID. Now there's no commute. And so that has been interesting, because that 2 to 4 hours of commute time each day is now either taken up with meetings or work, or I really have to be structured to tell myself to close the computer and to, take some time away from the screens and all of the activities to maintain some work-life balance.
Of course. And you mentioned earlier on too that you work with this global team. So how does that work in terms of your timeline and schedule, right? Particularly post-COVID, do you have to start early just to meet their, time zones, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that is also one of the reasons why I was drawn to Accenture, being a global firm, but also to the particular programs and clients that I work with, because they're global as well. We have many clients that work, only in the US or only on the West Coast, but many of the clients I get to work with are global in nature. And so our client points of contact, but then also my Accenture team are in a variety of places. And that brings some interesting challenges, right? Just with time zones. So I do, there are days where I start my day very early. This morning, I started at 6 a.m. on a call with Europe because that's, their afternoon. And so we only have a couple of hours of overlap. But it changes the day, but it, also means that if I have calls early in the morning with Europe, and then I maybe have some calls with India, then I have a bit of a break and I can sort of get some things done. And then occasionally we have evening calls with Asia. And so it definitely changes the cadence of the day, but I enjoy it. And one of the things that's been really great is really figuring out sort of the customs and the norms of how to work and how people work best, and the type of motivation they need, the type of reinforcement they need, the type of engagement. There are certain just cultural things that pop up where, just language differences, the use of terminology, and that's always very interesting, both on the client side and with the Accenture team.
That's amazing. What I'm hearing is that it's really the job is also almost helping you gain that cultural fluency because you're learning these different cultural values and different norms of working, right, across
100%.
various countries. Talking about working remotely, do you have any helpful tips for working remotely?
I think I do. I think I've done a pretty good job at maintaining my sanity while being, in my dining room.
Mhm.
Uh, I have learned that a couple things. I do not get work email on my phone, and I know that that's hard for some people to do.
Mhm.
But I started that when I was very junior in my career, and I realized that I was looking at it all the time. Right, it just was constant access. And so I can still get to it if I need to. I can go log in through a browser, but it is not pushed to me on my phone. And so that made me, like, when I get up, I sort of take stock of what came in and what my to-do list is. In the evenings, I take one more look at my calendar, and then I sort of put it away. If someone needs me, they will text or call me. And I've realized over the course of a decade plus that no one has really ever died from lack of a PowerPoint. And so there are some just personal. You just have to put some guardrails. I am trying at home to close my computer when I would have been commuting. So at the end of the day, around 4:30 or 5, I will close my computer to take a break, to work out, to make dinner, to do whatever I want to do. I will usually pick it up in the evenings. I like working at night, and so because it's quiet, and so I'll pick it back up, but at least giving myself that break. But to me, it is imperative that I actually close my computer and walk away from it. And then just other little things like getting up and going to get coffee or water and taking a bit of a break, because if we were in the office, I would be swinging by someone's desk to say hello, or we'd walk to the cafeteria to get a coffee. And so trying to mimic some of those same behaviors to keep some normalcy in the day.
Right. So I'm hearing, making that sort of effort towards self-care, being structured and disciplined in terms of when you are best in working and making sure that you're working during those times and then sort of, shutting it off in other times. Thank you for that. That's very helpful. And what would your advice be for our recent grads or our alumni in career transition who are interested in careers with Accenture?
It's a great question. So I think so Accenture is a very large firm. We have 500,000 people globally. And so there are a lot of different arms. There's strategy and consulting and operations and technology and digital, and we have a huge marketing arm and advertising arm. And so I would definitely recommend, before you sort of reach out to anyone, to really dig around in the website to figure out where are you most interested, right? We have groups that are dedicated to industries. We have groups that are dedicated to certain types of work. Do you have a passion in supply chain or a passion in HR or sales? And really trying to hone in, because it's a little overwhelming when you first get in there. And then also, all of our roles are always listed, and so being able to find something, it may not be an exact fit, but looking and saying, okay, this is something that I'd like to do. It may not be the correct level. And then when you reach out to someone asking about that specific thing, right? Or finding, the other question is what country or office or city do you want to live in? Because narrowing that down is very helpful. And then I'd also say, we have a lot of roles that could be at a variety of levels, right? We have 16 different levels of resources, and everything from analyst to managing director. And there are lots of opportunities. And I think there's no need to have any fear to try something out, to try to apply for something, even if it feels like a bit of a reach for you. You might as well try. The worst that someone can say is no, or they won't answer. But there's always a chance that something that you've done could be applicable to something that team is looking for.
Mhm. And what are opportunities for career growth within the firm? And if you've started working in a certain, say, arm, right? Let's say supply chain, can you move towards others and experiment and develop your skills in other areas as well?
Yeah, Accenture changes our operating model about every 2 years. So there are different sort of majors and minors that we get within our jobs as well. So when I first came in, I was aligned to our talent and organization practice.
Mhm.
And that we did a lot of change management, but I wasn't necessarily aligned to a specific type of client. So I worked with products clients and some retail clients. And then I moved into high tech, and then they changed a bit and wanted us to focus on industries. So I focused on high tech. And so there are a lot of opportunities to bounce around. You have to be your own advocate, right? Especially when you are really good at your job, people want to keep you around, right? You make connections with clients, or you're an expert in a certain topic, and people want to continue to leverage that, which is a great place to be. But there is definitely flexibility. And then in terms of upward mobility, there are so many options. And they do a great job at training and giving opportunities for learning and development, whether that, when pre-COVID and hopefully post-COVID, where we do a lot of training in person, a lot of simulations, but then we also have a lot of web-based training and a lot of webcasts and things. And so
Mhm.
it's a constant evolution of learning, and really you can go in any direction that you want, which is nice.
And for its global offices, does Accenture prefer recruiting locally for those positions? Or if let's say you were interested in working in Asia, could you ask to be assigned to a position there?
Yeah, so each of and I'm not an HR expert, but each of the offices typically hire on their own, right? So you would apply to that specific office and go through that specific HR group. Now, if you got, hired into the San Francisco office and then wanted to do a transfer, there are ways to go about that, and I've seen many people do that as well. But each office is it's not a franchise. We're all very connected, but they do have some, different sort of hiring procedures, office by office. So I would suggest, if you want to work in a specific office, that when you go to search for roles online, that you look for that office specifically.
Thanks, Jacqueline. And can you tell me some of your favorite resources to get information updates in your field, websites, blog, podcasts, associations that you follow?
Oh, that's a good one. Um, I should have prepared for this one a little bit more, Dee. I mean, I definitely love looking at, the Wall Street Journal, The Economist. We started reading those in grad school as part of a class, and I have not stopped. I love reading Fortune, right? Anywhere where I can see, anytime a CEO, gives a keynote address, or any of the big conferences, wherever you can join Dreamforce, or, Oracle World, or, and those are particular to my interests and my clients' interests, but, wherever you can go to just hear people speak and what they care about. I also am very passionate about, women in the workforce and the workplace. And so looking at, award winners from Brandon Hall, and looking at their credentials and how they do things and how they operate. I can't say I have anything that I sort of look at on a daily basis, but I'm constantly looking for just updates and books that I can read. And that's another sort of tip and trick, right, is to carve out some time each day to find something that is outside of work but is applicable or could be applicable, and just even spend 15 minutes, Googling interesting articles. It gives you little nuggets that you can use in discussions, and
And
I don't know,
sparks
I find
creativity.
exactly. I find those little sort of, pieces of random information come in really handy in a variety of different conversations, just to reference back to them. And so I'm constantly sort of on the lookout for new fun things.
Awesome. And then as a final question, what would be your sort of top three advice for those preparing for a job interview with Accenture?
So I would, one, make sure that you do some research, right, on the role, the company. Again, some little nuggets that you can throw into conversation that shows that you have some interest in the company, right? So whether that is, hey, I saw an article the other day where the CEO was talking about this topic, or, I saw something in the news. I mean, things like that are very helpful. I would also make sure that you have some questions as well, right? I do quite a few interviews, and it's always interesting. Um, it's interesting when someone doesn't have any questions, right? So come up with, tell me about the culture of the company. Tell me about what a day looks like. Tell me what can I expect in my first day or my first 30 days on the job, or you're a manager of many people. What does an all-star new hire look like? What do I have to get right to get my first promotion, right? Things, open-ended questions that can get the interviewer talking is helpful. And then I would also say trying to create a bit of a connection. And, that may involve sharing a little bit about yourself and your life, right? And I love a little banter at the beginning of a meeting to get to know someone. And a lot of people hop right in, right? They're so worried about regurgitating their entire resume that they forget to sort of ask, hey, how is the pandemic going for you? Or, what are you struggling with right now? It makes you a bit more of a human, and people hire people that they want to be around, not necessarily the words on a page.
Sure. You want to make sure that that authenticity and that personality shows, right?
Exactly.
And I know you're a third generation San Franciscan. And how does life post COVID look like in San Francisco right now?
Ooh, I'm not sure we're post COVID yet. We are very much locked down. And so, I'm just trying to lean into the quarantine. I've been doing a lot of, paint by numbers and organizing and reading. But I'm very much looking forward to seeing my extended family and friends. I think we're all craving time together. And so
Traveling again, probably.
exactly. I cannot wait to be on an airplane, counting down the minutes. I'm sure I'll take that statement back when I'm traveling every week. But for right now, I'm really missing
Silicon Valley again.
exactly. I'm missing my window seat and takeoff and landing. So hopefully soon.
Well, Jacquelyn, thank you so much for this delightful conversation. It was great to get to meet you, even if just virtually for now. So thank you so much.
Same with you, Dee.
Thanks
So
for
good to meet
taking
you.
help out there.
Let me know if you need anything else.
Will do.
All right. Bye.